UFC London, Draftkings has released the salary so we can take our first look. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. Last week, from a DraftKings perspective, not great. But the straight bets and the parlays came through the way that they normally do, so the damage was mitigated. I know some of you guys took the parlays that I gave you in the comments, and for those of you that did, nice work. But now we have a new week to work with an absolutely stacked fight card. And between you and me, I expect there to be a decent amount of Great British Pounds lost betting on the home team this week. And as always, at the top of the slate, we have $9,400 Paddy the Paddy. He's fighting Kazula Vargas this week. Paddy Pimblett is a giant favorite in this matchup, with money continuing to come in on him. Right now, he's about a 5-1 favorite, but I do think that this fight is closer than what the line is indicating. In his debut, we saw Paddy the Paddy get into a brawl with Luigi Vanderimi where he was almost knocked out. Now, ultimately, Paddy was able to find the first round finish, but if he fights anything like that this weekend, he's going to lose. Kazula Vargas is a much tougher test than Luigi Vanderimi is, and you can make the case that Vargas might even be the better striker in this fight. But what it really boils down to is whether or not Pimblett's going to be able to effectively grapple in this spot. Vargas has historically bad takedown defense, and for that reason, I do like Paddy this week. He should be able to get multiple takedowns or at least jump the back in the clinch and maybe find a submission from there. But I do get worried because Vargas not only can crack on the feet, but when you talk about the grappling, he's got that Tasmanian devil no-neck body. So it might be hard to find a submission even if you're in a dominant position with somebody like Vargas, but I do think that Paddy is going to be able to get it done. Even at this high price, he might be viable. I don't know if you absolutely have to get here, but I am going home team to start. So the pick for me is Paddy Pimblett by decision. And 9,300, Ilia Taporia, he's going to be fighting Jai Herbert this week. And just like Paddy, he's a massive favorite. If you don't know, Ilia Taporia is a beast. Undefeated, 91% finish rate, decent striking, but excellent grappling, which I think is going to be the big difference maker in this fight. It's going to have to be, because Jai Herbert is no joke on the feet. He may even be able to knock out Topuria if this fight is fought at range for too long. And Topuria is up a weight class on short notice against a knockout artist who's going to have a 6-inch height advantage and an 8-inch reach advantage. But even with all that, Ilia Taporia is still a big favorite because of the grappling advantage. And for DraftKings, he's got a high ceiling for sure. I expect him to look a lot stronger than Herbert in the clinch. I think we're going to see that when they're up against the fence and Ilia Taporia is digging underhooks. And I think ultimately he gets him down to the ground. Herbert may be able to get back up, but he's just going to get rematted again. And ultimately, Ilia Taporia is going to find the submission here. The pick for this fight is Ilia Taporia by submission. Next at 9,200, Gunnar Nelson is sus. He's fighting Takashi Sato this week. Nelson was originally supposed to fight Claudio Silva. Now he's getting Sato on short notice. What makes Gunny sus this week? Let me tell you. He hasn't won a fight since Cowboy Oliveira in 2018, and he hasn't competed at all since 2019. And when it comes to striking, he's not very defensively sound, and he's pretty low output. Now, his path to victory is obvious. He needs to get Sato down, find the submission, and that's totally possible. We've seen Takashi Sato in the past submitted by fighters like Miguel Baeza, Bilal Muhammad, who are both solid fighters, and I would choose both of them to win a fight over Gunnar Nelson, but they're not exactly known for their jiu-jitsu. For both of those fighters, that's actually their only win by way of submission is against Takashi Sato. That's the biggest reason to like Gunnar Nelson this week. That's the only reason to like Gunnar Nelson ever, is because he's going to have a grappling advantage. But the knockout threat on the side of Takashi Sato is too great for me to not like him this week. We normally side with the grappler in matchups like this, but I think Nelson's long layoff could mess with his timing a little bit early in this fight, and it really doesn't take much for Takashi Sato to end the night. So give me Takashi Sato by knockout. At 9,100, Muhammad Mokaev, he's making his debut against Cody Durden this week. Now, Muhammad Mokaev has an extensive amateur background. He has a ridiculous amount of amateur fights, and he's unbeaten as a pro, and I think he probably beats Cody Durden this week. Cody Durden is 1-1-1 in the UFC, and what I do like about Cody Durden, especially what he showed us in his last fight, is that he does fight hard for the whole 15 minutes. He's going to fight for your money. But talent-wise, skill-wise, technique-wise, I think that he's outmatched here, and I expect Muhammad Mokaev to win here. I don't expect him to get the finish. I expect it to be by decision, so I probably don't get there on DraftKings, but the pick for me is Muhammad Mokaev by decision. Next at 9,100, we have Sergey Pavlovich. He's fighting Shamil Abdurakhimov this week. Heavyweight MMA, anything could happen, but I expect Pavlovich to get the knockout in this spot. He's got big power, and he's also going to be coming in with an 8-inch reach advantage in this spot. I do worry a bit about the grappling of Abdurakhimov in this fight, and if he can secure takedowns over Pavlovich, I can see him winning this fight, but it's hard for me to get over that 8-inch reach advantage. And when you take that coupled with the power that he has, I expect to see something similar to what we saw in the Chris Daukaus fight. We saw Chris Daukaus light Abdurakhimov up in his last fight, and that doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence in the 40-year-old this week. He was knocked out basically twice in that fight, so I don't expect him to be able to withstand the power of Sergey Pavlovich, considering that Daukaus isn't exactly a power puncher. Now, at this price, I do expect him to pull decent ownership, but I think that it's justified with the matchup. So the pick for me for this fight is Sergey Pavlovich by knockout. At 8,900, Nathaniel Wood, he's fighting Vince Morales this week. More home team. There's a lot to like about Nathaniel Wood in this matchup. Wood should be able to get Morales down at will. He should be able to get takedowns when he wants, and we know that he has a slick submission game. Vince Morales has been submitted in his career, most recently on the Contender Series by Domingo Pilardi. That's really not a good look at all. You might also remember him getting his legs kicked off by Chris Gutierrez. And in most of Vince Morales' fights, he is getting taken down. We know that Nathaniel Wood not only has that strong takedown offense, but he also fights at a crazy pace. So I expect him not only to win, but he also has a pretty high ceiling with what he's able to do. So give me Nathaniel Wood by submission. Cory McKenna is 8,800. This is where we start losing money on the home team. She's fighting Elise Reed this week, and she's a sizable favorite. She fights out of a good camp, and she's cashed as a dog in her last 2 fights, which is very important. Elise Reed stepped in on short notice, up a weight class against Sijara Eubanks, got mauled in the first round. And that's what makes Cory McKenna's win so important. Cashing as an underdog gives the public a positive perception of the fighter. If you do it back-to-back times, it gives you an even more positive perception. And then take Elise Reed and what she looked like in a fight where Cory McKenna probably wouldn't have looked that much better. Now you're looking at a situation where Elise Reed is a big underdog in a fight that's pretty winnable. Now this can go either way. I'm not saying that Elise Reed is a lock by any means, but women's MMA, anything can happen, and I think the line is just a little bit closer than what it's indicating here. And one huge thing that stands out to me about Elise Reed is she's the only person to beat Jasmine Jasdavicius, which I think is a win that's going to start looking better and better as time goes on. And my final point on that is that it's much more impressive than the wins over Kay Hansen or Vanessa Demopoulos. So in this fight, the pick for me is Elise Reed by decision. At 8,700, Nikita Krilov is fighting Paul Craig. There's no chance this fight goes the distance. Krylov has had 35 professional fights. Only 3 have gone the distance, and they just so happen to be his last 3. Paul Craig has never won or lost a decision in his career. Krylov, I think that he may get the better of Craig on the feet, and I feel like we assume that in every Paul Craig matchup, but I see him struggling mightily when this fight hits the mat. Paul Craig submits Nikita Krilov this week. And what makes Paul Craig a nightmare to fight is how opportunistic he is. He'll snatch up submissions and reverse positions the moment the opportunity presents itself. We saw that against Jamal Hill, where he was able to grab up that armbar quickly. And we saw that late in his fights against Kennedy and Zejiku, where he rolled over into a triangle. And we saw the same thing against Magomed Ankalaev, catching him in a triangle at the very last second of their fight. Paul Craig is dangerous for every second of the fight. And on top of that, Nikita Krilov is one of these guys who, although he's very experienced, does tend to make small mistakes here and there. And for fighters who allow their IQ to fail them against Paul Craig, they get choked. It just happens. Paul Craig is going to fight for your money. I'm going to go with the more tricky and active fighter from the ground. The pick for me is Paul Craig by submission. At 8,600, Timur Valiev is fighting the undefeated Jack Shore this week. This is easily going to be the toughest test of Jack Shore's career. Valiev is very solid, he moves well, and he's going to be shooting for takedowns of his own. We know that Jack Shore is going to be looking for takedowns as well. He's secured 15 of them in the last 4 fights that we've seen him in. And we saw that Trevin Jones was able to take down Valiev. Now, Valiev should have the striking advantage, just being the more experienced fighter, at least at the higher level. Then again, he's not some dynamic striker who's going to put Jack Shore out on the feet. I think that Jack Shore is going to be able to get some takedowns. I think that he will bully him in the clinch when they're on the feet. I think that'll rack up control time from both of those positions as well. And we also hope to see improved striking from him, considering that he's 27, reaching his prime, fighting at the highest level now. The pick for me is Jack Shore by decision. At 8,500, we have Mike Grundy. He's going to be competing in a grappling match against Makwan Amirkhani this weekend. And it just so happens that it's going to be in the O2 at the same time as the UFC event that's taking place. But in all seriousness, this is a very hard fight to call because it's kind of grappler versus grappler. And not only are these guys looking for takedowns, but they're spamming takedowns on each side. But these guys are spamming takedowns for different reasons. Mike Grundy doesn't have the best entries, so for that reason, he's got to shoot for takedowns over and over again. He has a decent gas tank and tends to get a little bit stronger as the fight wears on, so I think he'll be the fresher fighter the later that this goes. For Amirkhani, he's great at securing takedowns. He does it much more consistently than Mike Grundy does, but he's not great at keeping his opponents down. So that's why when you look at the numbers, you see several attempts out of him, because he's constantly trying to remat people because he's not really doing a good job of controlling them on the ground. But from a DraftKings perspective, that's exactly what you want. Makwan Amirkhani was putting together a slate-breaking performance against Lerone Murphy in his last fight before a very fluky knee put his lights out. But in this fight, who do you choose if both guys are looking to grapple? Early in the week, I'm going to say Makwan Amirkhani because of the choke package. He has the Darce, he has the Anaconda. These are good frontal chokes, good anti-wrestling technique that'll serve him very well against somebody like Mike Grundy. These are chokes that you pull off from a sprawled position, so if Mike Grundy gets a little lazy with one of his takedowns or doesn't enter as well as he should, then he's going to find himself tied up in either a Darce or an Anaconda real quick. And we know that Mr. Finland is going to fight for your money. He might gas out in the process, but he's going to try his best. Either way, I do think that you'll need the winner of this fight in your lineups because of the wrestling. But for me, early in the week, the pick is Makwan Amirkhani by decision. Sorry, home team. At 8,400, Molly McCann is fighting Luana Carolina this week. McCann is going to be the more popular play for sure. Tapology votes have her at about 70% to win. She's home team, so if the round is close, she probably gets the round. The crowd will cheer for her every time she throws something, which will be often. She does throw a good amount of strikes. But I think as she's throwing these strikes, she's going to continuously get sniped this weekend. Luana Carolina can match this pace. She can stuff these takedowns, and she's going to enjoy a 7-inch reach advantage in this spot. I think Luana Carolina is going to be playing spoiler this week unless the rounds are really close. But if she can clearly take round 1, I think she's got this fight in the bag because I think it's going to be difficult for McCann to fight from behind. We picked Luana Carolina to win in her last fight against Lupi Godinez for pretty much the same reasons, and in that fight, Carolina did land the more meaningful strikes. Those more meaningful strikes ultimately won her rounds, and those rounds won her the fight. The problem is, from a DraftKings perspective, she's only going to score you a sad 60 points if she wins. No one wants a sad 60 points, but the pick for me is Luana Carolina by decision. Sorry, home team. Next, we have one half of our main event. We have our main event favorite, Tom Aspinall. He's got a tall task in front of him against Alexander Volkov this week. What I like about Aspinall is the hand speed for the weight class. He looks confident and composed when he's fighting, and he's very accurate. He finds a mark very quickly, and that's resulting in these early finishes. He's just hitting people flush. But I'm going to say it now, rest in peace to some of your great British pounds. My pick for the main event is Alexander Volkov by knockout, and I'll talk more about him when we get down there in the salary. And the last matchup we'll cover is Dan Hooker and Arnold Allen. They're right at that 8,200, 8,000 range. Once again, this price range showed up in the winning lineup last week. We absolutely need to get it right here. What we like about Dan Hooker is that he'll have a 4-inch height advantage, 5.5-inch reach advantage, all the experience in the world, and good anti-wrestling technique. He does a good job of throwing hard uppercuts and knees. He also looks for guillotines as well with that long, slender frame. And he's going to need it in this fight because Arnold Allen likes to mix it up and he likes to change levels. And I think we see more of that from Arnold Allen this week because he probably doesn't want to spend too much time standing across from Dan Hooker. It's a bad idea. But even so, the takedown defense of Dan Hooker is very good. I think we look at how Islam Makhachev sliced through him like a warm knife through butter and think, oh, he's not a great grappler. But that's not the case. Dan Hooker does have decent grappling, and if this fight was booked and he hadn't fought Makhachev, Hooker would probably be an even bigger favorite than just that slight $8,200 bump. The only concern that I have with Hooker is his chin at this weight class, but historically he's tough and I'll take my chances there. I think that he's better everywhere and I think that he'll be able to stuff the takedown. If you're an MMA fan, you're a Dan Hooker fan, and my pick for this fight is Dan Hooker by decision. And now to take a look at really the other side of the matchup, starting with Arnold Allen. I would be wrong to say that there isn't value here. Arnold Allen is a very solid fighter, a very good prospect in this division, but I don't think that he's going to be able to turn back Dan Hooker this week. Alexander Volkov, my boy this week. I think that he's going to be solid leverage, and I think that he wins this fight. Alexander Volkov has only lost 3 times in the UFC, and as you can see, those losses are to Derek Lewis. He was 10 seconds away from winning that fight. He loses to Curtis Blades, which no shame in that. Curtis Blades was able to wrestle effectively, but what we can take away from that is that Volkov continued to fight hard for the whole 5 despite getting taken down over and over and over again. And then he gets outpointed by Cyril Gane, and that's going to happen to almost everybody in the world. That happened to Francis Ngannou for the first 2 rounds. It just shows you that he's able to fight for the whole 5 rounds. Tom Aspinall has barely seen the second round in his career, and if you look back at his fight against Andrei Arlovski, yes, Aspinall was able to find the submission over Arlovski in that fight, but if you look at Aspinall's body language at the beginning of round 2, it didn't look great. It looked like he was getting a bit tired. It looked like Andrei Arlovski was starting to have more success toward the end of the first round. And when you look at the kick package that we've got on Alexander Volkov, the body kicks, the front kick, the leg kicks, I'm very interested to see what Tom Aspinall looks like in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. Because Alexander Volkov is not the kind of fighter that you could just gas out in front of and him not finish you. He's a big guy. He's been weighing in right next to the heavyweight limit, right at around 263 in these last few fights. And if he starts landing heavy with these combinations and these straight punches that he throws, he's going to put Tom Aspinall down late. So again, sorry home team, but I'm going with Alexander Volkov, and at 7,900, it's going to help you do a lot of things with your lineup. Luana Carolina at 7,800. I do expect this fight to be competitive. If she loses, I won't be shocked, but I just think that she's going to be the longer, more effective striker in this spot and probably just win rounds, steal rounds, and score about 60, maybe 70 points on DraftKings. Makwan Amirkhani, I mean, it's grapple, 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 and more grapple in this fight. If he's able to do it effectively, then you're looking at a situation where he's going to score you a lot of points, but if he's not and he gasses out and he loses, then, you know, he's pretty boom or bust is what I'm telling you. Jack Shore, I think there's a lot of value here at 7,600. I expect him to be one of the more popular plays, kind of like Terrence McKinney last week, but I do think that there's a lot of value here. Just the takedown upside alone is really what you're looking for, and if he can score you 109 points, 105 points, anything close to that at this price, then you're definitely in the running for winning your contests. Paul Craig, I really like Paul Craig this week. I just think that life or death, Paul Craig's not going to die, and I expect this fight to be one of those. Elise Reed, earlier I mentioned that I like her. Again, I don't really feel strongly one way or another about this fight, but I think that Elise Reed is kind of being overlooked. This is a better fight to bet straight, in my opinion. Vince Morales, I'm not really interested. Shamil, I'm not really interested. Same with Cody Durden. Now, this range here is actually very, very interesting because all of them have knockout upside and paths to victory. Takashi Sato is against Gunnar Nelson, who's kind of chinny, not that defensively sound, and Takashi Sato, he lays the wood, so I expect him to be able to find the finish in this fight if he does have success on the feet. Same with Jai Herbert. I mean, the physical advantages that he has in this fight are massive, and I don't think that they could be overlooked. The difference in height, the difference in reach, the fact that he's got Topuria coming in on short notice, and Topuria, who recently missed weight at 145 pounds, So you don't really know where his cardio, where his gas tank is, or what kind of shape he's going to be in. So the Black Country Bang or Black County Bang or whatever the hell it is, Jai Herbert's not too bad this week at this price. And honestly, I feel like Kazula Vargas could play spoiler for Paddy the Baddy. We saw Paddy get touched up against Luigi Vanderimi. Somebody like Kazula Vargas is hard to put away. He's easy to get down, not easy to keep down. We saw that against Ru Zong, so I think that there's value down here as well. One of these guys, I think Takashi Sato is probably my favorite, but I expect one of these guys to win and probably show up on the winning lineup. I'll be saving building lineups for the final picks video later this week, so make sure you watch. But build your lineups throughout the week. That always helps with your process. We talk about that in the How to Win video. If you're struggling to manage your bankroll, you can use the $100 strategy video. All these things are linked in the description. But thank you so much for watching. As always, if you could, like the video, subscribe to the channel. That way I could bring more of this to you.